I'm Susan Scott, and I work for Plus Perth, which is a mental health social movement in Perth. This film's been brought to you by ourselves, Angus Voice, and Dundee Mentally Healthy Network. So we're small, very, very small organisations based in Perth, in Tayside in Scotland. We've been struggling, as a lot of people have been in the world of emotional distress, we like to call it, in the way that people are being responded to. And we're locally going through a very difficult time, as people are. So I'd seen the film. It was through Beverley, actually, who in Beverley's group, and thought that this was just, if people had to see it, and mainly it was so the dialogue could begin, open and honest dialogue, bringing professionals, people that take medication, people that don't take medication, psychiatrists, just people, big pharmaceutical people together to discuss honestly about this area which has caused so much distress for people. So the other reason I think that we found this so important for people to see was the prevention component, that if people had more upfront knowledge of experiences and they could share that and realise that they weren't on their own, that actually what they were feeling, a lot of people were feeling, and it was out there, that maybe when people went to a GP with a symptom of anxiety or depression, they may question being commenced on medication, and maybe there's some alternative that would be better. So the hope really from getting this out there is that people will be more informed, and prevention is much better than cure, and in many people's view. So that's our main reasons, for bringing this. And we've done what we can as small organisations, and one of the things that we particularly thought about was we didn't want people to be left maybe feeling distressed, hearing some of the content and hearing some of the really sad stories that were happening to people. So I am going to just repeat. In Scotland anyway, we've got Breathing Space, and we have the Samaritans, and there's one or two sort of 24/7 helplines if people do feel that they need to talk to somebody. Unfortunately, this is all we have, and I can't speak for the USA or Lithuania. And the other thing really was just on the Medicating Normal website, and there's a lot around, if people have been moved by this film and they think, I'd like to start the process of reducing medication, where to go. We didn't want people to be feeling that being left high and dry, watch the film and then you're left. We really don't want that to happen. So you could contact Plus Perth. I think our email was, or it might be in the signing up form, but we are happy for people to email us. And obviously go on to Medicating Normal. So I'll just introduce the panel now and then leave, because this is really about the panel discussion. So Beverley Thomson, who is a writer, speaker and researcher with the main interest being in antidepressant harm reduction and prescribed drug-induced suicide. That's her main areas of interest. Then we have Daniel Fisher, who is a person with lived experience of recovery from schizophrenia, who then became a psychiatrist. And we have Dr. Dainius Pūras, who's a professor of child psychiatry and public mental health at Vilnius University in Lithuania. And welcome also to Mick Rattray, who's a singer, musician and artist with lived experience of coming off antidepressant medication. And of course, Angela Peacock, who is in the film. I've seen the film previously, so that's the panel. So I'll just introduce you, they can elaborate themselves. So I think that's about all I have to say.
Dr. Fisher, would you like to start? Just introduce yourself briefly.
Sure. I was very moved by the film, and Angela, your story, I mean, so many of the stories really touched my heart. And I went through my own lived experience, was on medication for a couple of years, and luckily had a psychiatrist that worked collaboratively with me to come off medication. And then I became a psychiatrist, and informed consent is very important. I'm not anti-medication. I'm anti-abuses of medication. It should not be a substitute for working out your problems. Support groups, therapy, meditation, exercise. There's a whole variety of additional ways that psychiatrists are not informed of. And I also promote and have been teaching a program called Emotional CPR, which is really hands-on. Anyone can help anyone else, just like CPR, through distress. And I think it can, I find that it can reduce the reliance on medication. So I teach this to my clients, and they don't immediately call and say, I'm anxious, you know, can I have more medication? Or I can't sleep, can I have more medication? And we just need more alternatives to medication. And usually it's human relationships, it's connection. It's just like the relationships that were shown in the movie between veterans in marriage. And that's what we need to support and understand that we can help each other. And I want to thank Susan for promoting this, and also thank Susan for supporting emotional CPR trainings in Scotland and other countries. So thank you all very much for this opportunity.
Dr. Dainius Pūras.
Hello, greetings from Lithuania. I liked this film very much, and I had memories about many people I met as a professional, but also as a UN Special Rapporteur on the right to physical and mental health. I was for 6 years, and yes, this film addresses this painful issue that despite good intentions, the global mental health and global psychiatry went wrong way, and we should do everything to help people better, but also to save reputation and image of medicine and psychiatry. So the story was that for 40 years, as we know, the biomedical model or paradigm is dominating. And I'm not against biomedical model, but it's when it's overused, when it's excessively used, including psychotropic medication, this causes more harm than good. It may be about antidepressants, about antipsychotic, about ADHD medication. And one story from my region, which is Central Eastern Europe, when peaceful revolutions took place 30 years ago in my region, and it was very heavy transition from totalitarian closed society to open society, but with sometimes cruel market economy. And many people did not have skills to live in freedom, so to say. And they were many of them were moving to self-defeating behavior, because if you do not have skills to live constructive life, you may become suicidal, or maybe you start to drink too much and so on. And then experts, consultants came from Western countries, and they told, but if you have high rates of suicide, we have Prozac now. You just have to, this is illness of brain. You know, you have to reimburse this new atypical antidepressants, and things will be better. And for 30 years, this is going on, and epidemics of premature deaths is also going on. So we still have this failure, and this was, now we think what we'll do. What the global question is, how we proceed with developing world, Africa, Asia, how can we cover so-called treatment gap? So I was warning as a special rapporteur that we should not make this mistake again, and to tell we should not suggest to solve difficult societal problems with psychotropic medications. This is a systemic failure, and we should learn from many lessons when psychiatry had good intentions but was going wrong with lobotomy and many other things. So we have now similar situation, and yes, I agree, this is mainly about informed consent, and people need to be very well informed about all sides of medication.
Thank you very much. Beverley?
Thanks. Thanks, Susan, for inviting me today. I'm a writer and researcher based in Scotland, and I've more or less dedicated the last 8-9 years of my life to looking at prescribed drug dependence and harm. I have a particular interest in suicide, particularly amongst young people, which is one of my key areas. In Scotland, we've made some really great progress in getting the government to be aware of the problem that we have in the country. In 2017, we launched a petition which had submissions from all around the world, which asked the government to look at and support people who have prescribed drug harm and who might be dependent on drugs. And I'm currently establishing a support service in Scotland to help people. I've also got a book that is coming out next year, which is going to be launched in the States rather than in the UK, but it will be in the UK eventually. The film is fantastic, and it's fantastic for a number of reasons. The first main one, I think, is as Dainius said, we talk about needing a paradigm shift in terms of the way we look at mental health issues. We actually need a revolution, to be honest. And the main thing that we need is education. We need education of patients, and we need education of the medical profession. And those are the two things. This film is fantastic as a start when it comes to that revolution. So well done to you all. I can't thank you enough for doing it. There's one thing that we all need to become, and this is what my book focuses on. We need to become savvy consumers. We're never going to get rid of medication for a very long time. It's always going to be there. It's always going to have place, and people are always going to believe it. But we need to start becoming savvy consumers and savvy patients. And that's where the change will happen. I hope that explains a little bit where I come from.
Thank you. Mick.
Hi, how you doing? My name's Michael Rattray. I'm a music composer, singer and producer from Scotland. I think the film's absolutely fantastic in raising awareness of this issue. So well done, thank you for having me. I've noticed with the internet, I'm hearing more and more stories like my own. The relief that I finding other people who have reacted to my YouTube video, it's just amazing connecting with all these people. And it kind of reconfirms that my experience is real. It's not all in my head. I was withdrawn from paroxetine 11 years ago, very quickly, about 3 months. And I'd been on it for 11 years. It hadn't really helped, so I didn't see the point in being on it anymore. I was still quite depressed. Nobody said to me, if you come off this quickly, it could devastate your life. It basically did. I went from doing an open university course to touring the UK to not being able to walk properly. And 11 years later, I'm still living with those symptoms. What amazes me is the drugs are never questioned, ever. There was one point, I went through a very severe depression, which was much worse than what I was put on it for, which I've heard a lot about. You know, the depression was very severe. I got ECT, I was self-harming, which I'd never ever done before, you know, the paroxetine. Sorry, I've forgotten what I was saying. Yeah, doctors, they kept trying to get me out of it, and then they would whip me off 3 really powerful psychotropic drugs to get me on a different one, which would knock anyone for 6, you know. And then the withdrawal from those 3 drugs gets diagnosed as something else. I can really relate with what Angela said about, you know, is another label going to be helpful here, you know? And when I went through the withdrawal of those 3 drugs, nobody ever said to me, oh, this is because we took you off these drugs really quickly. You know, the drugs are never blamed or questioned. And so this prolonged withdrawal, I can't put into words how devastating it was. My body felt like lead. Whenever I'd done anything or tried to do what I did before, I would become really ill. It's a really ill, poisoned feeling. So over the years, the depression has kind of improved. It's loosened up a bit, but these physical effects, real physical effects, have stayed. You know, and that's how I know it's not in my head, because even in my better periods, when I want to do things, I want to go for a run or, you know, do what I want, I can't. So the doctors diagnosed it as ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, which is, you know, compared to how it changes your life, it's such a sort of diluted name for it, you know. And the withdrawal from psychiatric drugs is devastating. You know, it doesn't just happen in a little box. It's, you know, when you go from being an active, busy working person to going to your friends so that you don't hurt yourself, and you can't go out, and you can't, all you can do is lie on their couch, you know. So I'm really grateful that I'm slowly getting better, but I'm still living with the effects. I have to practice meditation. 2 hours a day will let me do a little bit more activity and get 30% of the health I used to have without meditating. You know, it's bizarre, but I'm just so glad that these issues are coming to the forefront. And I'm not crazy, and I'm not alone, and I'm not imagining it, because I think doctors, they don't, a doctor would probably say, oh no, it won't be that now, that was 11 years ago, but everyone knows their own body and their own experience. So I'm still trying to recover from that, you know. Sorry if I blabbed on a bit there, but I think it's great that these films have been made and that people are connecting, because it's hidden, it's been hidden, you know, from the world for so long. I hope I'm making sense.
Perfectly.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mick. And lastly, Angela, who is in the film.
Hi, I'm Angie. You saw my story in the film. I'm now 4.5 years off of all medications. I graduated with my master's in social work, and I trained as an outpatient therapist. So now I'm kind of on both sides of the fence. But I don't want to get licensed right now because there's just so many ethical things that don't sit right with me about being a licensed professional. So this is my social work, and I enjoy talking to people. I think I've talked to maybe 5,000 people in the last year about this and done over 100 screenings and panels. So I just enjoy being able to talk openly about this because it was such a stigmatizing secret for so long while I suffered. So as I continue to heal, I'm actually traveling in an RV across the United States, and was screening the film until the pandemic kind of ruined it. So now everything is virtual. But I just want to say thank you for all of you for being here and being open-minded and open-hearted to have this really tough discussion.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions and pose them to the panel, and we can get started. So does anyone on the panel have an opinion on the lack of sex drive from antidepressants? When prescribed antidepressants as a teenager, it is difficult to know if the lack of sex drive is due to trauma or from the medication.
Yeah, well, sexual problems are one of the main adverse effects of psychiatric drugs. And actually one of the main reasons that young people stop taking them, which is possibly a good thing. Whether it will go away, the chances are it probably will once they've tapered from the drug. But yes, they are one of the main adverse effects.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would vouch for that as well. It's difficult to tell because trauma and depression causes that, but that's a really depressing side effect in itself, you know. And like what Beverly's saying, it's enough to make you stop taking it, because it's a really incredibly depressing side effect.
Yeah, it's actually listed as one of the main reasons why people do want to stop taking their medication.
Mm.
I can say, just from my experience, it's been gone for 16 years. So I missed out on my childbearing years. I had a marriage before psychiatric drugs, so I knew the difference between what a normal, healthy I was 24 when I was put on meds. So what that normal sex drive was at 24, and now I'm 41, and I have not had an intimacy for all these years, which is really embarrassing to admit, but I would tell the doctor that, and they would say, that's your trauma. So it was almost like a gaslighting. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm off, I mean, I've talked to my doctor about it. They don't really believe that it's a thing, but I've read the research myself on PSSD, post-SSRI, sexual dysfunction. I don't believe this is trauma. I believe the medications, it's almost like a sexual, what is that? Like lobotomy or something. Like it's missing. There's no feeling. There's no, it's a physical sensation that's also missing. And it's just like something you don't even think about. It's like it's missing. So for me, I don't think it's the trauma. I mean,
yeah. And there are also many different types of sexual dysfunction as well. It's not just a lack of. It can be hyper. Right. It can be many different types.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Fisher.
No, yeah, I just want to also say it. These medications block emotional connection, emotional expression, emotional feelings, and which itself leads to, you know, an inability to form an intimate relationship, because you need those emotional connections and feelings in order to develop an intimate relationship. So it's even broader than directly the sexual dysfunction. It's relational dysfunction. So you have people who, you know, you're anxious, you're depressed, usually post-traumatic, and you need more than anything a social connection, an emotional relationship, and you get medications that block that. So it is very, very disruptive to recovery in that fashion.
Someone says, I was suffering for about 6 or 7 years before I was diagnosed and prescribed drugs. Do you think these drugs are not suitable for anybody, or are they just not suitable for some people? Are they being overprescribed for less severe cases?
And maybe I say a word about that, because balance is the hardest thing to achieve. And there are instances, usually short term, where medication can be helpful, but it should always be with informed consent. And it should be, when I prescribe a medication, I do prescribe medications at times. I say, this will not solve your problem. This will alone. You need to solve your problem. It can assist while you take control of your life. And that's, I think, a very important distinction. And if I find that somebody says, oh, but this pill's going to, solve my chemical imbalance, I'll say, no. And I really don't want to prescribe it if that's the way you're looking at it. You need to take an active role. And the relationship that you have with your doctor is very, very important. You need to trust them. They need to trust you. You need to be in close communication. And I'll also say, if this medication doesn't work, stop it, but call me.
Yeah.
We really want to give control to the person who's taking the medication, because you don't have control over it and you have a side effect, you're going to just stop and not tell the doctor, or you're going to, continue and not understand what the problem is. But it communicate what the problem is, what you're feeling. And I really do believe that doctors should take these medicines ahead of time. I had all the major antipsychotics, and I know in my youth, I know now, if somebody says they have dry mouth, attend to that right away. If you're a doctor, or you're any kind of medical doctor or prescriber, somebody has dry, the kids is still, attend to that right away, because it actually it's called akathisia with major antipsychotics. It can lead to suicide, because if you can't find a comfortable way to sit or stand or whatever, and you don't have communication with your doctor in a timely manner, you may feel your life's not worth living, but it always is worth living. Find somebody, talk to somebody, and then that's the best prevention for suicide.
May I add? I think that one of the problems is in medical education, which moved too much to future doctors are often trained to be as aggressive as possible. So, which may be good for intensive care and some life-saving conditions which we know exist in medicine. But psychiatrists have been also trained in the way that the more medical you are, the more biomedical you are, the more, for example, if you don't prescribe, like in my region, if you don't prescribe medication, are you really a good doctor? Why you don't prescribe medication? So doctors have this privilege, doctors have this monopoly of power, which is harmful, I think, for psychiatry. And in the film, there was an episode when there was question why other mental health professionals never told, that this bad condition could be from medication, because by all the rules of game, they are incompetent. They are considered to be incompetent. If you are not a doctor, you cannot comment on medications. This is monopoly of doctors, so they cannot even say if they're social workers or psychologists. So, and this went wrong. I addressed in my reports to UN that what is now the biggest problem is not so-called heavy burden of mental disorders. I think that this concept medicalizes even more the field, but power asymmetries, which between users and providers of services, but also between doctors and non-doctors, when the rule of game is that doctors have to pretend that they know everything, and this is not healthy. I mean, this gives you power, but this psychiatry is not exact science. As we know, there are no markers, biological markers for any single mental condition. So the way out of this global crisis is to reduce power asymmetries and to agree that all experts are equal, including experts by lived experience. And I met, luckily, many psychiatrists who agree with this, but still there is minority among psychiatrists who would agree to share power with others.
Looking at whether we're overprescribing in cases where we probably don't need to prescribe, we need to think about if we have a really good doctor or a really good psychiatrist, the first thing that they should be really saying is let's wait let's wait and see what happens, you know, let's wait 6 weeks and see how life changes. You know, there's been extensive research that tells us, at Brown's University, there was a study, I think it was about in 2006, that said to a large cohort, and 85% of people without intervention recovered in a year. No intervention whatsoever. You know, this is part of the way that we need to start thinking. You need to start thinking about this in a different way.
Go ahead, Mick.
I completely agree with Beverley. I've forgotten what I was saying again. I'm sorry. You have to. My brain just goes sometimes. Yeah, I was. One of my friends passed away once, and I had this really rubbish psychiatrist. He was obsessed with medication, and I was really upset on top of being severely depressed. And he said, "Oh, we need to up your medication." And I was like, I'm actually upset. I've lost a friend. Oh no, we need to put it back up, you know. And I was like, well, I've spent a lot of time tapering it down, the side effects. And he wouldn't listen, you know. So it's that medicating normal thing again. And I think for years I just accepted that it was my illness coming back, you know, and it was so difficult to deal with the withdrawal that I just couldn't face it because I was so busy trying to survive. But now it feels great to talk about it and look back, you know, and you know, I have to use my wee mobility scooter or my electric bike now, and sometimes I'm out on it and I just think, my God, you know, this is medication that doctors say is safe, you know, and you put your trust in them. And obviously there is an unlucky group where they get really severe withdrawal if they withdraw very quickly, but there's also a group who cold turkey and are fine, you know, which confuses it even more. It's really difficult, and it's difficult to talk about because these drugs can save people's lives as well, but they can also destroy them if they're left on them for no reason. Like looking back now that I'm a bit better, if I had got therapy when I was 21, when I first started feeling depressed, I don't think I would have went through all this, you know. And if you're not getting better, they just add another drug and another drug. And I think that happened with Angela as well. But when I was in hospital, there was people on like 10, 12 drugs. And I just thought there's something really wrong there on some level, you know. I can't remember how that was related to what you said, Beverley. I hope it was. I go off on tangents, sorry.
Okay, so the next person says, I think it was Beverly, you said on we need to become savvy consumers. This person says they totally agree with that, but their experience as an HG psychotherapist is that many of their clients would not have that awareness at their point of crisis. The GP is the best right first step, and the fluoxetine or sertraline is a super common holding solution until that person can see a talk therapist who themselves has a range of skills. What then would you recommend for a person who's in crisis and might not be aware as this audience here?
Well, I think what I would say to that is that I was talking about education, and education needs to be twofold. It needs to be the patient, but most of all, it needs to be the medical professional. There are medical professionals who are too quick to prescribe, and that will always be the case. At the moment, in terms of someone being in crisis, it's very difficult because we have a huge lack of any support services in the UK. Back in, I think, 2016, the BMA had meetings and they recommended that we had a 24-hour helpline, that we had support services, that there was education for the medical professional, and none of it has happened, unfortunately. In fact, those small services that actually exist are now underfunded and are in crisis. So really, I don't have an answer. I will be totally honest and say I do not have an answer to that question. Finding a medical professional who is sympathetic and understanding and who is knowledgeable is key to it, and educating yourself as much as you can. But if somebody's in crisis, that too is very difficult. What we need are dedicated support services so that everyone can get help. And that is an urgent need in this country and in the US.
Can I say something about, I don't know, part of your question made me cringe because, and I saw Dan shaking his head too, so I'm not alone in that. But the part that like, you know, like that patients are just, they lack insight, they don't have skills, that you just need to hand your body over to the doctor and let them fix it, is just, it has to go. Like, this is the crux of the whole problem. And what I learned as being an outpatient therapist for a very short time was that most people, and this part is true, most people, when you ask them, how are you feeling right now? They have no clue. So we don't learn that inner, like, what am I feeling right now? What's affecting my life? Maybe my job is terrible and I need to change jobs, and that's going to be really hard. Maybe I'm a victim of poverty and that's causing my depression. There's all these things that are so self-evident, but we're not taught to look at them. You know what I'm saying? So I think this needs to go back to like childhood age, parents being taught and they teach their children. You're in church, you teach the people in your church. I don't know. There needs to be like a widespread re-education of our society that, you know, we have feelings. This is what they do. There's external things to us that give us those feelings, and that our context can very much impact our mental health. And we have to fix those problems, not blame it on the individual. You know what I'm saying? Like this whole notion of, I just think it's a slap in the face to tell someone who's experiencing like racism, homophobia, and poverty, here's an antidepressant because you have a chemical imbalance. Like it's completely backwards to blame the individual for what is happening in their context. So, I mean, I know that that's status quo, that, you know, the patient lacks awareness and that you need to be on a med to stabilize you. That's our current model, but it needs to be completely blown apart. I mean, look where it's got us. The suicide rate is the highest it's ever been. It's not working.
Yeah, I'd like to build on what Angela said. It is a widespread, I mean, Beverley was saying, I think you need a revolution. The revolution is the revolution in how we deal with emotions in our societies. And it is even more basic than the medication. The medication is terrible, it's overprescribed, but it's sort of secondary to this more basic problem that Angela's bringing up. And that's why, I mean, we did a lot of studies on how do people recover from severe psychiatric problems, and it's all about relationships and connecting, but we don't know how to connect. Yeah. We don't know how to hear our own feelings, just like Angela said. We don't know how to express them. We don't know how to be with people. So the medication is really an expression of our avoidance, I think, of feelings and emotions, grief, fear, anger. These are human expressions. And I think, you know, if we can all learn, you know, how to communicate on an emotional level, how to hear each other, how to be empathetic, we won't actually need these medications nearly as much because we'll catch them early on. And as Angela said, it should start with young children right at the beginning. I think somewhere around age 6 to 10 or something around that area, especially boys learn to suppress. And then now girls are learning to suppress emotions. That leads to violence, it leads to drug abuse. It's the most traumatic thing that happens in our societies. So and developing countries, Dainius was talking about developing countries, they do much better until they're westernized. Their recovery rate is much higher. And then they import diagnosis, they import, you know, this avoidance of feelings, and then they start to have intractable psychiatric problems. So let's keep the West away from the developing countries, bring in what they do to our so-called sophisticated Western society.
You know, I mean, one of the problems is, and this is part of the revolution needed, we're bombarded with mental health messages from a very young age now in schools, by charities, and it's not mental health, it's life health. It's how you deal with life. I'm really sorry. Kick the mental health. For some people, it works to think it's but it's not. It's life health. It's how you deal with your life. And once we start accepting that, and once we start talking about that, then we can start to change things. But teaching a 6-year-old that they need to look at their mental health is not going to stand them in good stead for the rest of their life.
Okay.
Dainius, wait, Dainius, do you have any thoughts about this subject?
Well, we could teach everyone, children and adults, to respect each other. It's about human rights. It's about zero tolerance to any violence, any discrimination, and we should address inequalities and poverty, and then it would be much more impact on mental health than psychiatry is doing as service providers. Psychiatry and mental health services are needed also, but they should be free from coercion.
Yes.
So if we say that violence is wrong, is harmful to mental health, why then psychiatry is using so much coercion, including in order to give medications? So one of arguments is that if person does not agree to be treated voluntarily, then we shall use force, and the laws in each country allow to discriminate people with mental health conditions and to deprive them of liberty and so on. So this is another issue which, despite all these investments in biological psychiatry, coercion is on the rise, especially in advanced, so-called advanced developed countries.
Yeah.
So this is one more example of vicious cycle, which the global mental health is a vicious cycle of social exclusion, discrimination, helplessness, and even force is used to improve mental health, which is not helpful, of course.
Okay.
Can I just say something?
Sure, go ahead.
You know how we're kind of saying, you know, it's about taking care of your life and stuff, but there's also, well, I feel I have to say this, but there's also a section of people who do great with their lives and have great lives, but it's their mental health that stops them. So how do you deal with that, with the depression that seemingly comes out of nowhere? You know, and the person can't say it's because of this in my life, it's because of that, because my depression was very much like that. It was inward, you know, and I could never get across to people why I felt the way I did, and everyone was like, you know, oh, you've got so much going for you, and you're like, no, it's not like that. It's, you know, so in a way it was stopping me from being able to take control of my life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's the problem with the current paradigm that we have, is that there are so many variables, but we're treating everybody as if they're exactly the same.
That's
they're
right,
not.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're exactly right. There are some people who genuinely, seriously do have, sorry to use the term, mental health conditions, who are ill.
Mm-hmm.
But we cannot treat everybody the same, which is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. My friend, I couldn't believe this. Somebody I know was stressed at their work, and they were off for 2 weeks, and then the doctor said, if you're still not right, we can talk about medication. And I was like, no, you know, look, get another job, or, you know, it's the job that's directly causing that stress and that reaction, which is normal, you know. But at the other end of the scale, you've got me when I was really ill saying, you know, I don't want to live anymore. Why? Because of how I feel. And I remember saying to my doctor, if I could pinpoint one thing out here, it would be so much easier, you know. But somebody's got a dog. Yeah. So it's difficult as well. But that's exactly right. How can the same drug treat everybody and do the same thing? You know, I don't think they're even aware of how they actually work, because the serotonin thing's based on a theory. So how can, you know, how does that actually work in reality? But I think questioning it's extremely healthy. So that's why I'm here as well.
Can I make a little comment on what Mick was saying? Because I run into this a lot. I'm a psychiatrist. People come to see me with some very severe problems.
Yeah.
And in fact, they come to see me when often nothing else has worked, because I have an alternative point of view. And families especially will come with, you know, a young man usually, whose the medication didn't work, hospitalization didn't work. Dr. Fisher, you got better. What worked? And it wasn't ultimately the medication, no.
No.
The medicine helped for brief periods of time, but it was finding purpose, finding meaning, finding passion, finding connections, finding people. It was taking care of my physical health, you know, exercising, looking at what you eat, and caring about living, caring about one's own life and caring about other people's lives. And recognizing that these usually come from trauma that might have been passed on generation to generation, because people say, I see nothing wrong. I want to make a pitch for open dialogue too. Susan's familiar with it. Perhaps I see Angela nodding. Open dialogue is such a sensible approach, and we need these alternatives. It's just gather together the family and don't blame anybody, and say, what can we do to help each other out in each other's evolution? So the problem came from Finland is it's not in any individual, it's in the relationships between people. And you know, the parents used to be blamed, the son or daughter was blamed. No, we're all in this together. And this is what I practice. I learned it from these Finnish psychologists. It's just marvelous. But it is very difficult to get it into the US. I went to the head of the National Institute of Mental Health, because I was on our White House commission. I said, this is what you should be doing. The recovery rate from acute psychosis is the highest in the world. This is what you should be doing. His name is Tom Insel, and he looked at all the research that we cannot import it into the US. And I was dumbfounded. I said, why do you say that? He said, it's too different a model. And as Dainius was saying, we are captured by the medicalization. And this is so different from medicalization. I mean, just imagine 2 routes you go. Down one route, it's a chemical imbalance, treat the individual, give them medication. It's a result of all this, you know, that framework. The other route, actually, it's interpersonal. But they do give some medication also in Finland. Give it the context of the relationships. And they give it, you know, for shorter periods of time, lower doses. You don't need as much. Very sensibly done.
I actually came to...
How we can change our culture. We have to change our culture, really.
Yeah. I've been to one of your workshops. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay.
Go ahead. I'm through. I'm done.
I was just saying, I've been to one of your workshops in Perth. I really enjoyed it a few years ago. It was brilliant.
Well, I just try to tell it like I experienced it. That's all.
But instead of you being the last resort, you should be the first resort. And that's how we need to change things.
Okay, this next question is sort of a two-part question. One person says, what would each of the panel members recommend that we as individuals could do to move this conversation forward? Are there practical things we can do? And then the other second part of that is someone's concerned that the movie is maybe only shown, you know, in a bubble to people who already are aware of the issues, and how do we get the message out to a more general audience?
want me to answer part of it? So I'll answer, we are trying. I'm helping with outreach. Me and Nicole do all the outreach for the film. We try so hard to get mainstream mental health people, universities, especially med schools. If you know anybody that can help us, please let me know. But we've had some, I don't know, not much. So I don't want to make it sound dramatic, but some pushback, that people think the film is too biased, or you're not telling the other part of the story. But my argument is always that story is already told. This is telling stories that are not being told. So we wouldn't, I don't know, it's a strange thing. But as far as, so if you know any universities, we are getting ready to sign a deal with an educational distributor. So hopefully that will move it forward in the education sector. And, I really want psychiatric residents to watch this before they see patients even, Then secondarily, what do we do to move the conversation forward? I have so many things I could say. Just, I would say promote messages of resilience, of inner self-knowing, of, like Dan was saying earlier, like how do we express our emotion? How do we be a good friend? How do we be a good family member? How do we sit with someone with really strong emotions? Even I just had this conversation yesterday. I'm not going to say with who. It was a very, very huge organization, multi-billion-dollar philanthropy organization. And I said, they said that they had a concern that, the other side wants to be told, and we want to talk about the other side. And I said, just from lived experience, I just want to share this with you, that I think something bigger is going on, that we have these stories of harm, and before we even let the story of harm out of our mouths, the other side wants to swoop in and say, but what about us? Meds help us. Because that's so uncomfortable that we can't even hold that. To hear Mick talk about his antidepressant withdrawal story. And then there's someone in the comments that lost a sister to suicide from benzos, that we are so quick to swoop in and say, but wait, meds save lives, that we can't sit with the uncomfortability of people like me and Nicole and Mick have been harmed irreparably. And so, I don't know. I think there needs to be, I need work on that. Like, I need to be able to sit with people that say meds help them and they need them in their life saving. That's hard for me because I was one of those people, and then they turned out not to be true anymore. So I think self-knowledge, reaching out. I think me personally, what I've done is I've stopped promoting 1-800 numbers. I'm so sorry, Susan, because I know you said one, but I'm like, call me. Don't call a 1-800 number. Call me. I'll sit with you in the dark, whatever that looks like. So just bring the power back to patients, I think, and education and knowledge and self-knowledge, and being able to cry and sit with it and hide in the bathroom if you have to, or stand on your head if you're having a panic attack. You don't need a Xanax. That's my story. That's my message to you, I guess.
Oh.
Sorry, I missed the question, but it kind of made me think about something that I wanted to say about people saying that drugs save lives. The people who generally say that drugs save lives are one of the millions who sit in a silent epidemic of being dependent on drugs. They think they're saving their lives, but really they don't know what's ahead of them if they ever try to come off those drugs.
Yeah.
We have millions of people in society who sit now dependent. Some people have been on these drugs for 30 years and they're never going to get off them. And it's very easy for them to say, they saved my life. They might have done, but we don't know. The fact of the matter is that we need to address this issue of dependence for a number of reasons. One of them being it makes people incredibly vulnerable. And that's something that is hardly ever spoken about in relation to antidepressants or psych drug dependence, especially in the US and your medical system. These people need these drugs, and their condition should be regarded as a pre-existing condition. If they suddenly can't have their meds, they're vulnerable and they're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
May I say something about how to move ahead on this question? I think we need critical mass. We need more people among users of services, professionals, but also politicians, policymakers, general public. The situation is very interesting in global mental health. There is a hard talk about whether we invest in status quo or we move away from status quo. And it's nobody knows what will happen, but there is a temperature is quite high in debates between experts, which is, I think, good sign. For me, the main word is empowerment, because the mental health services should empower people, and they promised this 40 years ago with biological psychiatry, to fix disorders and to destigmatize, to make mental disorders the same as physical, and this failed, as we understand now. So this is why the empowerment, I think, is the main thing. That if mental health care wants to be at least to reach the level of what happened in the rest of medicine, the rest of medicine moved from paternalistic approach to partnership. Maybe not in ideal way, but still, doctor and patient, they discuss. So the same has to happen with the mental health care. So, and this will be empowerment, and not these vertical relationships between psychiatrists and patients.
I think I can only take it on a kind of individual level. When people ask me, sometimes, a few people have said, what happened when I'm in my little scooter? And I just hit them with the truth. I say I came off an antidepressant 11 years ago, far too quickly, and my central nervous system still hasn't recovered. I can't walk far, So, and I spoke to Bob Fidderman. I don't know if any of you know, he's a campaigner against Seroxat. He's written a book called The Seroxat Scandal. And I was going to be getting in touch with the company and telling them what happened, and he said, oh, they'll look at your medical records, they'll blame everything else. I've completely forgotten what I was saying again. Sorry, I'm so nervous. I'm on a roll and then it just goes. Yeah, Bob Fidderman, and he said, I'd said to him, what can I do then? I'm this tiny little drop in the ocean, and they're this big corporate company who won't even, I just want acknowledged, I just want acknowledgement. I don't want money or anything from them. And he said, talk about your experience, post about it. And it was actually him that spurred me on to make the video, the YouTube video. So that's how I do it personally, is by talking about my truth and what's happened. But I think even some people don't believe you. They're like, oh no, it won't be that now. That was so long ago. And but it's my truth. So that's the way I try and get people aware of it, but it is hard because these cases are hidden as well. My case is quite extreme, and I can't remember who said, but they said, you're in the unlucky group that gets severe withdrawal, and but there is actually thousands of people across the world who have it. So by talking about it personally and to people I meet, that's all I can do personally,
That's a great thing.
It's been taken ages to be able to talk about it, ages, because I couldn't accept it, for a long time. But it's since I've got a little bit better, I was like, God, I can't believe this has happened. These are really powerful drugs. But yeah, but I'm going to be making more videos and posting more about it. That's all I can do as an individual. So
can I add just a little bit? Organize, and advocacy at all levels is very important. That's what we do through the National Empowerment Center, and people tell their stories. They tell them as they can be done in many venues, and the more it's done, the better, because there is a great variety from many different backgrounds. And I also wanted to say just a moment about emotional CPR. We don't get a lot of money from this, by the way. So this is not like a, I don't know, a promotional you know, for-profit thing. It's not like McDonald's, believe me. We hardly get any money from it. But this is our collective wisdom of people worldwide who've been through their own recovery experience from a variety of severe conditions. And if we could teach this like CPR, I believe, to everyone worldwide, and we're now in 16 countries, but I mean really have it be just part of everyday life, that you can be with people, as Angela was saying, you can be with people and be with yourself when you're feeling severely distressed. If somebody cries, you don't immediately say, here, take a Kleenex and take a Prozac. No, you say, wow, that touches me too. And I can feel some of your pain. It moves me when I think daughter just had a very good friend who committed suicide because she had no hope. She felt she had no hope. And it is everybody's job to help with other people's recovery. It's not even just peers. Peers can be helpful. You know, meaningful therapy can be helpful, but it's day to day. It's where you are, you know, at work. It's where you are at school. It's where you are with friends. And this is the job of all of us. And we're trying to spread this. And whenever people take the course, it's 12 hours online now, it's real. We do real plays and we connect, empower, revitalize. That's the C, the P, and the R. Simple as that. It's really just how can you be with someone, not fix them, not do for them, but just be with them and be with their pain and feel their pain. That's really emotional empathy. And that's what's missing in this highly developed society that we, you know, are killing each other with. So I don't like to promote what I do that much, but I really believe in it. It is my life's work. I'm almost 77 and I don't want to leave this world worse than I arrived in it.
It would be really interesting to research, wouldn't it, to look at what percentage of people who were initially prescribed psychiatric drugs were actually suffering from something as simple as loneliness. And it would be a huge amount.
Huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everybody for sharing and answering those questions. I'm aware of the time. I think we've been on for coming up on 3 hours. So I think now we can wrap the discussion, but I want each panelist to have some time to have a few closing thoughts or to plug their work and websites. And then after everyone has had the opportunity, Angie will just close us out with some information about the film, and then we will all part ways and hopefully still keep in touch. And so who wants to start with some closing thoughts for everybody?
I will. I feel quite emotional after listening to Dan there. That was really nice that he shared that with us. I just want to say thanks for having me as well. It means so much to connect with people who just get what you're saying, you know. And my message really is, if you're thinking about coming off your meds, go slow. Just please go slow. You know, don't risk ending up in that group, you know, that I've ended up in, because it's not worth it. And the slower the better. You know, there's no rush. That's what I do. If I feel the withdrawal coming in, I'll just hold it and say there is no rush, you know. But that's my message to anyone listening. Please don't cold turkey, you know. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Beverly, go ahead. Oh, she's frozen.
I would probably just just build on what Mick has just said. And I think one of the most important things that we have to think about when somebody is approaching withdrawal or tapering from medication is that there's no point in doing it unless you maintain some quality of life. People talk too much about, dose reduction. It's about time. It's about the time that you take and trying to maintain some kind of quality of life while you're doing it. Otherwise, there's absolutely no point in doing it. That's it, really. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm happy for you to put my email address out, or yeah, they can find me on Facebook.
Dainius, do you want to?
Yes, some concluding thoughts about the global picture, because I was very much involved in this. For example, now when we have a pandemic, I think it can have sobering effect, because shall we again medicalize all these millions of cases when people feel more anxious, more sad, because there are tendencies. There are publications about tsunami of mental illnesses, and you know that rates of mental disorders are 3-5 times higher. This again will lead to the same medicalization. So we need to send messages that, of course, that people should receive support and care, but why they should be medicalized? This is normal reaction to a not normal situation. The WHO, there was one question to me about what WHO is doing. It's doing best, but not very slowly. But if you read guidelines of WHO, they always write that first line treatment for most conditions is not medications, it's psychosocial interventions. But then they tell always psychosocial interventions and medications. And then in implementations, usually medications become first line treatment in many countries, but we should not be so. And one good thing was that some countries that were champions and special rapporteurs like me and others, and Human Rights Council, which can be not necessarily friendly on human rights, in global reality, produced 3 very good resolutions. I recommend to use them as an advocacy tool. The last was this summer, 2020, a resolution of UN Human Rights Council on mental health and human rights. And one of key words there is to warn against over-medicalization. So from Geneva, from Human Rights Council, they send this message to governments: avoid coercion, avoid institutionalization, and avoid over-medicalization. So these are good signs, but of course, much more has to be done.
Can I just add in that since March 2020, statistics in the US tell us that antidepressant prescribing has increased already by 19%. Benzo prescribing has increased by 34%. That's since March. The pharmaceutical industry are already getting together their COVID-19 PTSD campaign. We need to be aware.
Yeah, I feel that at this point it is a disaster. The COVID crisis is a disaster worldwide, and I just 2 mornings ago woke up just feeling dread, a sense of dread. The political consequences, social consequences, as well as the economic ones, are horrible. And but talking to a friend, I just shared with a friend, and I just said I really need help. I often give help, or I give hope, but I need hope. I need help. And she said, well, you've given it to me in the past, and I'll share it with you now. And it made all the difference. I then sat down. I said, well, I'm going to write an editorial about this. I'm going to continue organizing, the groups that we organize, and I'm not going to give up. but we need each other very much. And Susan, thank you to Susan. She also has been very helpful. There are people that when you connect with them, you can create a new life, a new sense of power. And I think power, as Dainius said, is what we have to recapture. And we recapture it, I find, in mutual support, in mutual respect for each other, without the power differential. And put our roles aside and be human beings together. And new power emerges. I saw that, Angela, in your story very much. And I think among vets that happens. And find group that you can connect with, and you sometimes only need 2 or 3 people, and you can call and you can be with, and then take action. And I thought the report, Dainius, that you all did was terrific. I looked at it when it came out. I was like, isn't that wonderful? And then I look at what WHO continues to do. They continue, I think, unfortunately, primarily to support the medicalization. And the psychiatrists that are in charge are the academic psychiatrists that are getting pharmaceutical money. And we need to grasp back control of how people help each other and get that word out. And I think this movie is wonderful in that direction, and great to have a panel after it to give the nuances. It's true, the movie is a little heavy in the direction of, meds are dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. Well, they are dangerous, but I would say keep promoting alternatives as well, because often they prescribe a medicine and say, all else was tried. Well, did they try, open dialogue? Did they try, self-help? Did they try acupuncture? Did they try Qigong? Good God, there are a million ways. And it should be there for everyone to find and not have to say, we tried everything. What do they usually mean? Well, we tried Zoloft and that didn't work, so we tried Prozac. We tried everything. And I want to also make a pitch against ECT. That is the most, electroconvulsive therapy is one of the most dangerous procedures, and it continues to be practiced again and again. And we need to find a way to really put a stop to it, I think. I mean, some people say, well, it really helped, but it needs to be regulated at least. They don't even have regulation here in the US, and I don't know about other countries, of ECT. But thank you all very much. Thank you for doing the film. Thank you for sharing your lives. And I really appreciate this. This is
Susan, you want to go last, and then I'll wrap it up. Oh, we can't hear you. Take you off mute. There you go.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm not going to say very much at all, except I'm really very blown away by what I've heard and what I've really listened to and what I'm seeing people writing up as well. I feel quite emotional, and I feel that it's been a very great session, because I think one of the main things, well, what sticks in my mind, all experts are equal. We're all equal, and I think that sticks in my mind, what Dainius said, what people have been saying, what we've said, very wise words. And I just hope that we can, and I think we can continue to grow and to create critical mass, to kind of keep challenging and changing the things that we know are wrong. So I'm just so pleased and happy that we've managed to show the screening to people, and great, fabulous panel, fabulous help from Nicole and yourself, Angie. And that's really all I want to say. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, the panel. This is one of my favorite panels so far. Oh my God, I talked to you for, I was like, what? We've already been an hour? Oh my gosh. But so last thoughts are, if you know any organizations that want to host a screening and panel just like this one, please email us at medicatingnormal@gmail.com. On our website, we have alternatives, resources, and reading lists. So we always say this, we don't want you to believe anything we said. Go do your own journey, your own research, figure things out for yourself. And lastly, we have a YouTube channel with over 100 clips and conversations like this one. So this one will be available later. We also have a store. We are always in need of donations to help us fund things like this and pay for our platforms and everything. So if you're moved to do that, visit our website. And just thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful night, and just be gentle with yourself. That was a very intense conversation indeed. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tammy.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm doing another one of these tomorrow night. here in
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Dan.
Massachusetts.
Me and Dan are double duty this week. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.